particularly with a small business or a startup, um, a lot of times your name is going to be in part of the company name. Alan C. CMO Temps, Miller Law. And when I'm contacted by somebody, there are two things that I am going to do. I'm going to Google your name to see what comes up, and I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn. And so for those people who don't think that those two things won't happen, your prospects, your potential investors, your potential customers, your potential partners, they're going to Google you. They're going to look you up on LinkedIn because trust is so important. And I've got a theory for trust, that it's rapport times credibility divided by risk. You want to build rapport, you want to build credibility, you want to reduce risk. If I can do that, mathematically, that makes your trust number really big.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Alan C. And Alan started his journey out of college, going into the journey in college at the United States Naval Academy, and wanted to play football there, but was too small to play football. Also wanted to be a pilot, but vision wasn't good enough to be a pilot. So ended up transferring to a different college and went into sales and worked for a large corporate business, building up their sales channel after college, and then started looking into the more marketing side of things rather than sales, and became a professor in marketing, and then started reading about how the typical marketing manager have very short tenures, and then got into LinkedIn and Twitter at an early stage and other social media platforms, and saw how these platforms could be used to generate leads, and started a fractional CMO service back in 2018, but doing it ever since. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Alan.
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Excited to have you on. So I just gave kind of the quick walkthrough to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind and unpack that a bit? So tell us a little bit about how your journey got started going off to the Naval Academy.
Right. So I was growing up in the cornfields of Iowa, Grinnell, Iowa, a small town of about 8,000, one of those small country towns with one high school. Was lucky enough to get a congressional nomination from our state senator to the Naval Academy to be in the class of 81. I had pretty good success as a high school athlete in football, baseball, track, and basketball, and thought that I could maybe take a chance at playing Division I football at the Naval Academy. But as you said, at 5'8", 165, Division I's a pretty tough go at that size. So I did end up transferring schools, ended up finishing my BBA and MBA at Abilene Christian University down in Texas. So still graduated in 1981. And at that point, I had decided that I was going to not go home to the cornfields of Iowa, but at that point, the oil fields of Texas were booming. And so I got a chance to get on with Dowell, which is a division of Dow Chemical. And I learned the oil field industry from cementing, fracturing, acidizing, open hole logging, cased hole logging, perforating. I was calling on geologists, petroleum engineers, oil field executives, oil field companies that were startups themselves, acquiring leases and drilling. And it was a great experience, I learned a lot. Called, like I said, from everybody from a roughneck to, an oil field executive. So it was a great sales experience. Along that journey, I went back to school at night to get my MBA. And in 1986, as with a lot of business cycles, at that point, in 81, oil futures were predicted to go over $100 a barrel. In 1986, they were at $10 a barrel. And so a big bust. And after completing my MBA, I had a chance to get on with NCR Corporation. So a complete switch in field, still sales, but moving from the oil field industry into high tech. So I was calling on now bankers to sell account processing systems, ATMs, item processing, and the technology industry. I was successful in the field out in West Texas, and in '92 they transferred me to the world headquarters at NCR, and it was there that I got exposure to Teradata, which was at that point owned by NCR Corporation. And so now data warehousing, business intelligence, CRM is something that's starting to get onto my radar screen. Well, in 2000, now I have a chance to move to management consulting with Capgemini Ernst & Young, specifically within their high growth consulting unit. So again, we're going to cycle up to another cycle of business. It's in early 2000, the internet's booming. Lots of companies are jumping into the CRM, software, hardware companies. You got Siebel and all these different, organizations. And the high growth business unit at Capgemini Ernst & Young was specifically pointed at some of these new startups. Well, I was tasked with helping develop their intelligent customer growth point of view and solution, which dealt around solutions like Hyperion and software companies that were in that business intelligence CRM space. And then I also was fortunate enough to be a part of the CRM Index launch, which was a study Capgemini Ernst & Young did, in which they interviewed the heads of sales, marketing, and customer service for several different organizations across several different industries. And it was there that I started talking to CMOs, interviewing CMOs. And at that point, I thought, starting off in oil field sales, and now it's, about 20 years later, and I'm like, I think I figured out what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a chief marketing officer. It's about the same point that LinkedIn starts up. And so I was the 74,000th person on LinkedIn, which sounds like a big number, but being one of the first 100,000 people, they consider me part of the beta group. And so
now, just out of pure curiosity, just because, I love LinkedIn and I use it all the time, but I'm certainly not by any means a beta group. How did you get connected up with them or get in that initial test group? I mean, because it sounds like, on a lot of so you made the shift kind of from sales over to marketing. And then as you got deeper into that world, you got, started using some of the, what now we take for granted, but the earlier platforms at the time. But how did you kind of get into those or get connected up with them?
Yeah, so this is going to be a story of why networking and building your personal brand is so important. So all that time that I'm creating and making my numbers with NCR and everything. Now, this is before the internet, so there's you had to do things the hard way, like create your own press releases to send to local newspapers and stuff like that. But I was able to get myself into Marquis Who's Who in America. And so my bio is published in Marquis Who's Who in America, and in making those transitions to different companies, I have headhunters reaching out to me, and it was actually a headhunter that called me up and said, "I'm a part of this beta group on LinkedIn. I think this is going to be a huge tool. You need to get on it." And so it was through that contact that I was on it. But when I first got onto LinkedIn, I'm looking at it, and I went, oh my gosh, this is not a resume tool, because I'm looking at things through the lens of a salesperson. And I'm thinking, this is a business development tool. I'll never need a business card again. If I can get onto LinkedIn, build my own network through here, I'll always know where my contacts are, what they're doing, and how we might help each other. And so I look at LinkedIn, Twitter, and a blog as being a power triangle to being able to create your personal brand, to be able to gain exposure, and to be able to get the word out there, so to speak, but in a soft way. So I was just a big fan of LinkedIn and got onto that platform early.
So now you get onto those platforms. Now you started. It sounds like you're still working at the previous business or before you did your own business, you were starting to use those platforms. Now kind of walk us through kind of how you transition to the business you're doing now, which was the fractional CMO. Kind of how did you make that decision or make that that or decide to go in that direction?
Right. So again, being a management consultant, I'm plugged into companies like Forrester and Gartner and things like that. And at this point, Forrester is starting to do a lot of studies on the different C levels, particularly the CMO, and they start publishing papers on the average tenure of a CMO. And at one point, the average tenure of a CMO dipped to like 17 months. And so I'm looking at these studies and thinking, wow, I want to be a CMO, but these guys don't have a very long lifespan. They seem to get jettisoned, pretty quick, whether they're successful or not. And that is when the idea of saying, well, one way to help reduce a potential partner or employer's risk is to say, I get it. We might get into this, and you might say, it was a great idea at the beginning, but we don't like it anymore. Well, if you want to cut me loose at that point, no harm, no foul. I'm okay with that. So we can do this W-2, W-9. We're both adults here, and let's just know, if you're willing to give it a try, I'll do my best. And if it doesn't work out, we can both go our own ways and be happy about it. And that is what literally led me to thinking of part-time, interim, fractional. Now, those words weren't exactly the words being used at that point, but I knew at that point that signing up to be a lifelong employee somewhere, even though companies they absolutely love to be voted the best place to work. And
Sure.
so they try and get all their employees behind those surveys of, isn't this a great place to work? But you know what? There is no loyalty. I mean, I've worked for small companies and big companies. And when it comes to the bottom line, when hard decisions have to be made, good people still get let go. And that's just going to happen, which again points back to why you want to be building your personal brand, because you don't know at what point that might happen. And that is really what segued into becoming that fractional interim chief marketing officer type of role, which I've now been doing basically since I guess 2008.
So now let's dive into that just a little bit. So you decide, okay, hey, I certainly get the pitch, and it's interesting. That's quite a ways back. Comparatively, you're now seeing a lot of fractional services, and I think people are finding the flexibility and the desire to be able to, start their own business, capture their own destiny, but also on the business side of saying, hey, maybe I don't need this full-time person, but I want those services and that expertise. But now, as this is back in 2008 or so. Well before Zoom was popular and a lot of other things, and a lot of those tools that we now take for a bit for granted. So how did as you're building up that fractional CMO services, was it well received? People loved it. They utilized it all the time. Was it a slog to get people to convince them that it was worthwhile to try out? Or kind of as you're testing that out, how did the reception go, and how did the business go?
So in the beginning, I didn't try and spend a lot of time explaining that this was fractional, interim, or part-time. I literally, again, the importance of networking, still staying active on LinkedIn, creating blogs, writing white papers. I was creating a lot of content, even early adopter of video, in order to create my own personal brand awareness. And now, the reason for that. Now I'm in the B2B space. And so, maybe somebody in the B2C space wouldn't be thinking this way, but in the B2B space, particularly where deal values are high, sales cycles are long, you might have multiple executives that have to be convinced and massaged. It's important for people to know, like, and trust you. If they don't know, like, and trust you, then, you're not going to get things off the ground. So I always think in those terms of creating that content and creating that credibility. So as it relates now, back to that is I somebody would contact me for help, but as we would be working on that, I'm still networking, looking for and thinking I might have to jump at any time, because at that point I'm still thinking of the Forrester reports and that the average tenure of a CMO isn't very long. And I can show you that. I mean, I can tell you that you start pumping up a company's sales funnel really well, and all of a sudden they start seeing the tricks that are in your magic bag, how you create the lead generation funnels and stuff like that. And it's natural. I mean, people think, oh, wow, thanks for teaching me. Now I don't need you anymore. and so, if they kept me on, that, that was great, but I've always been prepared for the next jump because, I mean, this is maybe not a good way to look at things, but I basically, trust people as far as I can throw them. Because again, you talk about customer loyalty, employee loyalty. I've been through too many, in 40 years, I've been through a lot of business cycles. And as Will Rogers once said, the trouble with using experience as your guide is that sometimes the final exam comes first and then the lesson. I've had a lot of lessons. And so I kind of take the Boy Scout motto of always be prepared.
No, I think that definitely makes sense, and I think it is natural. I like at least the perspective of, sometimes it is, hey, we're getting started. We're in an area that we don't know as much about. And it's natural as you learn more, as you figure out the tricks and the tips, as a startup or a small business, you're looking to save money and you're looking to, to take on those responsibilities or bring it in-house. And so, but I think that makes sense with the fractional CMO is, with that perspective of, hey, I'm here to help you out while you need it, while you can utilize my services. If you get to a point you don't need me anymore, no harm, no foul. And glad that, things are going well, and vice versa. As long as I can be of help and service, then I'm here to assist the business. I think that definitely makes sense from that perspective to build it up. And so now walk us through. So you started 2008, started building it. You've been doing it now for 14, 15 years. Where's the business at today, and kind of how have things progressed?
So where the business is at today? Well, so I am 6 months from turning 65. And I can see retirement here starting to form very clearly here at the end of the tunnel. Now, fortunately for me, what I do, I mean, my kids are long. I have grandkids now, so at this point, I can travel. I can work from anywhere that's got an internet connection. So I have a very flexible schedule. With that, I am starting to get a lot more picky about the type of work and jobs that I will take on. So hold on just 1 minute. About that.
No worries. It's a lot. We keep it natural, and things come up every so often. So go ahead.
And I moved the phone to the other room, but I didn't remove the base.
That's how it always goes. No, but yeah, go ahead.
I love technology. Yeah, so I'm being a lot more discreet about the type of jobs that I will take on now. And if it's a project that I really look at and I go, oh man, I feel passionate about that, I'd really like to help, then it's not like I'm saying I'm going to just quit completely. But I am at this point. Well, at this point, I've always been the product and the solution. So it's not like I have some kind of big team that's on my payroll that I need, to worry about. I've gotten very good at leveraging freelancers and leveraging my connections in order to outsource some work and stuff that I've not been able to do on my own. But for the most part, I'm in that wind down stage, and we'll just start taking some jobs that I'm more passionate about.
No, I think that's awesome. That's always a nice place to be, where I always look at it, and there are just some clients that you just want to fire, you don't want to work with. That is, you're early on, you're saying, hey, we're going to take the jobs that pay the bills, and we need to build a business. And so sometimes you put up with the headaches, or otherwise don't, work with those clients that maybe aren't your favorites, but get the bills paid. But then as you can progress, you can start to almost, in quotes, fire the clients, or in other words, be more picky. In other words, choose the clients you like to work with, or do the work you like to do. And it's a great place to be, and it makes it certainly enjoyable. So it sounds like a great position for you to be in. Well, now as we've kind of caught up to the present day of the journey, and even in here, or kind of where you're headed a bit into the future, great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
Yeah. And so this is going to be, that must be fate. I can't believe the way you just teed up my answer to this question, because when I think about that question, what I will say, well, in the stock market world, there's a lesson that you pick a single stock and it decreases, 5%, then 6, then 7. When it hits 8%, it probably means you made a wrong pick. And now, for that stock to actually turn around and make up the 8% it lost, plus make you any money, brokers would tell you, cut your losses early. Cut your losses early. If it falls 8%, that's your mark to say, wrong pick, sell. And that because you're making up for lost time. So my lesson learned, and I'm learning, I've kind of learned this lesson based on what I just told you, is that I wish I would have cut my losses earlier with a lot of projects and customers that I chased. In other words, I put the proposal in the funnel. They still kept coming back saying, we need another case study. We want you to do this. We want you to do that. And before you know it, through the proposals and case studies and everything, I basically educated them. And which means I've been working for free. And I'm now much better at those initial meetings of realizing this can go someplace or this won't go someplace. And so the lesson learned is, don't be afraid to, as you just said, fire a customer, fire a prospect. Just say, no, I can tell this isn't going to go. And I now do that on LinkedIn with people who want to, connect with me and have a conversation about how we might work together to, blah, blah, blah. And I'll look at their profile and I'll look at what they're doing and the space that they're in. And I'm like, thanks for reaching out, but I'm not interested.
No, I think that, as the business grows, as you have that flexibility, and it takes some time. I think, as you're early on, you're just trying to keep the lights on and get the bills paid. But it gets, as you progress and as you are able to hopefully grow and expand the business, then to get to that point where you can, be a bit more selective and you choose the clients that make the most sense. And it works out both ways. Sometimes you take those clients and they're not a good match for you and you're not a good match for them. So I think that that's an easy mistake to learn or make, especially as you're starting out, but a great one to learn from as you go along.
Absolutely. On the flip side of that, I absolutely would have loved for somebody early on to say, thanks for the proposal. But no, your company's not big enough. You don't have the background we're looking for. I mean, I'd rather them fire me from their vendor list than have me thinking I'm chasing something that's going to, to work out. So it absolutely works both ways.
Yeah, I'm definitely there with you. So awesome. Well, now the second question I like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Well, particularly with a small business or a startup, a lot of times your name is going to be in part of the company name. Alan C. CMO Temps. Miller Law. And when I'm contacted by somebody, there are two things that I am going to do. I'm going to Google your name to see what comes up, and I'm going to look you up on LinkedIn. And so for those people who don't think that those two things won't happen, your prospects, your potential investors, your potential customers, your potential partners, they're going to Google you. They're going to look you up on LinkedIn because because trust is so important. And I've got a theory for trust, that it's rapport times credibility divided by risk. You want to build rapport, you want to build credibility, you want to reduce risk. If I can do that mathematically, that makes your trust number really big. So if I'm not building rapport, if I'm not building credibility, if I'm not helping reduce risk, then I'm not building trust. And trust is going to come through when they Google your name and, oh, you come up on the page 1 organic results. Now, I don't have an exactly name that's it's not John Smith or something like that, Alan C. But if you Google my name, I compete with another Alan C. There is more than one Alan C in the world, and he and I compete a lot. He's a clothier, actually, in Hong Kong. But still, my LinkedIn profile and my Twitter profile and my YouTube stuff will come up on the page 1 organic results. So, you have to have that kind of mindset. I'm going to create credibility. I'm going to build this social network, this social capital, and I want to make sure that if somebody Googles my name, that good stuff's coming up. If somebody looks me up on LinkedIn, that right from the get-go, yeah, okay, this person has credibility. They, it looks like they definitely build rapport and networks. That makes me feel like I'm reducing my risk in dealing with them. So whatever your business might be, as an entrepreneur just starting out, just know they're gonna look you up, and you want some good stuff to come up.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and great takeaway. And I think sometimes people are like, well, as long as I provide a good service. Yeah, and it's providing a good service. But as you need to, as you said, build that trust, that, especially on the front end, as people are just getting to know you, just starting to use your services. Just like when you go onto an Amazon and you look at the product reviews and you're trying to select it, people are also looking for the, or who they're going to work with and what that looks like and what the reputation they have. And I think building that credibility and having that on the front end definitely is impactful and makes a difference. So I think that's a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. Well, now as we wrap up, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, so they can actually through my LinkedIn profile, which you'll be directed to my LinkedIn profile through my Alan C CMOtemps.com URL. So that is going to be the best way for them to be able to reach out and contact me if they direct message me or contact me through that platform. Yeah, I'm going to turn around and look at your profile and see who it is that's reaching out to me, but that will be the best way.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, and support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help along your journey with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Alan, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you. It was fun.